Let's vote. Should he still be family? My dad asked at Thanksgiving dinner. They voted me out. Minutes later, I returned to the dining room with a manila folder. I'm 34 years old and finally free. For almost a decade, I've been nothing but a walking ATM and emotional punching bag for the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally. It took me far too long to realize that in my family, love came with invoices attached. I never imagined I'd be the one to bring everything crashing down around them, but sometimes the truth is the most devastating weapon of all. Growing up, we weren't wealthy, but we weren't destitute either. My parents worked steady jobs but lived perpetually beyond their means. Our house was always filled with new furniture they couldn't afford, electronics still in boxes, and my mother's endless collection of decorative items that maxed out credit card after credit card. My sister Lucy, 2 years my senior, was their pride and joy despite her tendency to make catastrophic life choices with clockwork regularity. She dropped out of college 3 times, changed career paths annually, and somehow always found men who treated her terribly while draining her bank account. I was the quiet one, the responsible one, the one who started working at 16 to pay for my own clothes and school supplies while Lucy got new cars and lavish Sweet 16 parties that my parents talked about for years. When I needed new glasses, I saved for 6 months. When Lucy wanted LASIK surgery at 19, my parents took out a personal loan the next day. The pattern was set early, and it never changed. I put myself through college with scholarships and part-time jobs, graduated with honors, and landed a position at a financial consulting firm that quickly recognized my talent. I lived frugally, invested wisely, and by 27 I was making 6 figures and had built up a respectable investment portfolio. That's when the emergencies began. The first was Lucy's car repair, $2,000 that I handed over without hesitation when she called crying about how she'd lose her job if she couldn't get to work. 6 months later, it was my parents' mortgage payment because my father had temporarily reduced hours. Then Lucy's credit card debt from a shopping spree she regretted. Then my nephew's private school tuition because he tested gifted and the public schools would stifle his potential. Each time the same mantras, family helps family, and after all we've done for you. The irony of that last one was completely lost on them. I started keeping records after the total passed $20,000. Meticulous spreadsheets tracking every dollar, along with text confirmations and emails that established clear expectations of repayment. Thanks for the loan, we'll pay you back next month when the commission comes in from my father. I owe you $3,500, we'll start payments when my tax refund comes from Lucy. Even my mother's careful wording, we'll make this right once Roy's bonus comes through, we always pay our debts. I saved everything, though it wasn't about the money I could afford, but about the growing realization that I was being used. For larger amounts, I'd even gotten smart enough to draft simple IOU documents, which I presented to them casually, saying they were just for my records. They laughed it off while signing, assuring me it was unnecessary between family. Still, I kept helping, kept hoping they'd eventually see me as more than their financial safety net. 3 years ago, Lucy went through her third divorce. The settlement cleaned her out, and she came to me sobbing about how she might lose her house where my niece and nephew had finally found stability. $15,000 later, she was throwing a freedom celebration party in that very same house, a party that I wasn't invited to but saw plastered across social media, complete with catered food and a hired bartender. 6 months after that, my parents took a luxury Alaskan cruise while their roof was leaking and their property taxes were overdue. Guess who paid for the new roof and kept the county from putting a lien on their house? The pattern was clear. My money wasn't for emergencies, it was for maintaining their lifestyle. I started saying no to smaller requests. A designer handbag for Lucy's birthday, a golf club membership for Dad, Mom's idea to remodel their perfectly functional kitchen. The response was immediate, cold shoulders, snippy texts, conversations that stopped when I entered the room. My father would sigh dramatically when I visited, making comments about how some people just don't understand the meaning of family. My mother would call specifically when she knew I was at work, leaving tearful voicemails about how she didn't raise a son to turn his back on his parents. Once, I overheard my mother on the phone with my aunt. He's become so stingy, all that money and he can't even help his own family. I don't know where we went wrong with him. The final straw came 3 months ago. Lucy called about her amazing business opportunity, a boutique fitness studio that would revolutionize workouts for busy moms. She needed just $25,000 for initial investment, and the returns would be astronomical. She'd already found a location, she said, and had started telling people she was the owner. Having learned something from my previous generosity, I asked for a business plan, financial projections, and a repayment schedule. Her response was volcanic. "I'm not one of your clients. I'm your sister. I can't believe you don't trust me after everything we've been through together. Do you think I'm stupid? Do you think I can't run a business without your almighty approval?" The next day, my mother called to tell me how disappointed she was in my lack of support for family. My father texted that we needed to have a serious conversation about priorities. My aunt, usually neutral in family matters, left a voicemail suggesting I search my heart about why I was blocking Lucy's dreams. For the next week, I received nothing but one-word responses to my messages and calls that went straight to voicemail. The family group chat, normally buzzing with mundane updates, fell silent the moment I posted anything. Then came Thanksgiving. I arrived at my parents' house, the one I'd helped them refinance twice, the one with the new roof I'd paid for, with a bottle of expensive wine and my girlfriend's homemade pumpkin pie. Julia had a work emergency and couldn't make it, which in retrospect was a blessing. She'd been growing increasingly uncomfortable with my family's dynamic, noticing things I'd become blind to over the years. The atmosphere was tense but superficially civil as extended family arrived. My Aunt Marie and her husband, 3 cousins and their spouses, my father's brother Uncle Pete and his college-age twins. Everyone exchanged hugs and pleasantries, though I noticed my mother's embrace was stiff, perfunctory. Dinner was a master class in passive aggression. Every family accomplishment mentioned explicitly excluded me. Every conversation somehow circled back to the importance of being there for each other. When I mentioned a recent promotion at work, my father quickly changed the subject to how Lucy was taking a brave risk with her new business venture. I weathered it, focusing on my nephew Tyler's stories about his science fair project that I'd helped him with last month. He was the one bright spot in the family dynamic, curious and kind-hearted in a way that seemed to have skipped the rest of the genetic pool. After dessert, the conversation drifted toward family support. My cousin mentioned helping his parents renovate their bathroom. "That's what family does," he said proudly, glancing at me. "You step up when they need you, no questions asked." "Some people understand family obligation better than others," my mother added, her eyes flicking meaningfully toward me. "It's how we show love." Aunt Marie tried changing the subject, asking about Christmas plans, but Lucy wasn't having it. "Speaking of family support, Mason, did you ever reconsider helping with my fitness studio? The opportunity is still there, though I've had to push back the opening date." Her tone was honey-sweet, but her eyes were cold. "I told you I need to see a business plan before." "A business plan," she interrupted, voice rising. "From your own sister. Do you ask Mom for spreadsheets when she needs help? Did you make Dad submit projected returns when his car broke down? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You treat us like we're clients or strangers." My father jumped in before I could respond. "Your sister shouldn't have to prove herself to you. That's not how this family operates. We trust each other. We support each other's dreams. That's what being a family means." One by one, they took turns. Uncle Pete told the story of how his brother, my father, gave him his last dollar during college. My cousin thanked Lucy for babysitting on short notice last summer without asking for anything in return. My mother reminisced about how her parents had sacrificed to help her buy her first car. Each anecdote underscored the same message. Family helps unconditionally. Family doesn't ask questions. Family doesn't demand paperwork. Family doesn't say no. "Maybe Mason's girlfriend is turning him against us," my mother stage whispered to Aunt Marie, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Ever since he started dating her, he's been different. Cold." The room grew tense. I set down my fork with a clink that seemed to echo in the sudden silence. "Julia has nothing to do with this. She actually encouraged me to help Lucy, but I just think there should be some accountability for." "Accountability," my father's face reddened. "Is that what family means to you, keeping score, tallying debts?" "That's not what I—" "No, I think we finally see you clearly." My father stood abruptly, napkin falling to the floor. "We've discussed this privately, but I think it's time we address the elephant in the room. This family operates on trust and mutual support. If someone can't abide by those principles, perhaps they shouldn't be considered part of this family at all." The room fell silent. He looked around the table with grim determination. I'm asking for a vote. Should Mason continue to be considered part of this family, given his complete disregard for our needs and feelings? I know this sounds extreme, but I think we need to be clear about our values. One by one, they voted. My father, no. My mother, it breaks my heart, but no. Lucy, absolutely not. Uncle Pete looked uncomfortable, but muttered, sorry, kid, no. Cousin after cousin followed suit, no. Only my elderly Aunt Marie abstained, studying her napkin with sudden interest, refusing to meet my eyes. By unanimous decision, my father announced with grim finality, you're no longer part of this family. You can leave now. He gestured toward the door as if I were a stranger who had wandered in uninvited. The room fell silent. They were waiting for me to break down, to beg, to promise I'd change, to pull out my checkbook there and then. Instead, I felt a strange calm wash over me, like I'd been swimming against a current for years and had finally decided to let go. I've been waiting for this moment longer than you know, I said, my voice steady. Excuse me for a moment. I walked to my car, retrieved a thick manila folder from my trunk, and returned to the deathly quiet dining room. I placed the folder on the table and opened it. Since I'm apparently no longer family, I think it's time we formalize our financial relationships. I pulled out the first stack of papers, bank statements, text messages, emails, and those signed IOUs I'd been smart enough to collect. Over the past 8 years, I've given this family $78,435. None of it has been repaid, despite numerous promises and written agreements. I laid out specific documentation for each person. My father's $12,000 in loans for property taxes, home repairs, and the time his car was repossessed, and I got it back for him. My mother's $9,500 for medical bills not covered by insurance, and the luxury cruise they desperately needed for their mental health. Lucy's whopping $47,000 for everything from divorce lawyers to her children's private education, car repairs, rent when she was between jobs, and the deposit on an apartment after her second husband kicked her out. Even smaller amounts to cousins and my uncle, $500 here, $1,000 there, adding up over the years. As a particularly effective touch, I read aloud text messages they'd sent each other that had been forwarded to me by mistake, messages mocking my gullibility, and laughing about how they could always count on Mason's guilt to pay the bills. The most damning was one from Lucy to my mother after I'd paid her property tax bill. He actually believes I'm going to pay him back. Should I get the Gucci bag or the Prada with the extra money? My mother's response. Get both, honey. He won't miss it. Since we're no longer family, I continued, sliding a document across the table, this is a formal demand for repayment of all loans with 5% simple interest, which is more than fair given the current market. You have 30 days to arrange payment or establish a payment plan before my attorney files in civil court. I've had these documents prepared for months, just waiting for the right moment. Turns out it was today. I stood up, gathering my coat. Family isn't just about blood, it's about respect, reciprocity, and genuine care, none of which I've received from any of you in years. I looked at each shocked face, lingering on my father's now pale complexion. I'll see myself out. Happy Thanksgiving. The first text came before I reached the end of their driveway, Lucy, alternating between rage, how dare you embarrass us like that, and panic, you know I can't pay that much. By the time I got home, my phone was exploding with messages. My mother claimed I'd misunderstood everything, that they'd always intended to pay me back but had financial difficulties I couldn't possibly understand. My father transitioning from threatening to destroy me if I went through with this to pleading that I consider his health condition that would be worsened by financial stress. Lucy sent 37 messages in the span of 2 hours, cycling through every emotional manipulation tactic in her arsenal. I turned off my phone and slept better than I had in years. The next morning I met with my attorney, Sam, a college friend who had watched this drama unfold for years and had been urging me to take action. We initiated the next steps immediately. I revoked the power of attorney I'd foolishly given my parents in case of emergency. I removed myself from all joint accounts and family trust documents. I sent formal loan collection notices to each person who owed me money, with detailed accounting of every dollar. Within days, the family dynamic imploded. Lucy's husband, Tim, who had apparently been told their children's private school was being paid for by a family educational fund, discovered the truth about my sister's financial manipulation and her frequent shopping sprees while claiming poverty at home. My parents, forced to explain to extended family why they suddenly needed to borrow money, found sympathy in short supply when the full story emerged, especially the part about the luxury cruise while their roof leaked. Credit scores plummeted as I reported the unpaid debts to collection agencies, something Sam assured me was perfectly legal given the documentation I had. The manipulation attempts escalated to almost comical levels. My mother was rushed to the hospital with chest pains that mysteriously resolved once I was notified and explained to the concerned relative who called me that I wouldn't be coming to the hospital. My father showed up at my office lobby, threatening to tell everyone what kind of son you really are, until security escorted him out. Lucy created a scene in the lobby of my building, screaming about how I was destroying her children's future, conveniently forgetting that I'd been paying their tuition while she bought designer clothes. Each incident was documented, each threat added to the growing legal file that Sam was maintaining with meticulous care. 2 weeks after Thanksgiving, my parents' financial house of cards began to collapse spectacularly. Their attempt to refinance their home to pay me back revealed multiple undisclosed loans and a second mortgage they'd taken out without telling anyone. Worse, I discovered my father had forged my signature as a co-signer on one of these loans years ago, something I learned when the bank contacted me to verify information about a missed payment. The bank, identifying potential mortgage fraud and concerned about violations of lending regulations, froze their accounts pending a thorough investigation. Their branch manager later told my attorney that my parents had misrepresented their income and assets on multiple applications, claiming income from rental properties they didn't own and investments that didn't exist, triggering automatic fraud protocols under federal banking policies. Lucy's fitness studio investors, approached by her with promises of my continued financial backing, complete with a forged letter of intent she'd created on my company letterhead, pulled out when they learned the truth. Her leased BMW was repossessed from her driveway during her son's birthday party, leading to a meltdown that neighbors still talk about. Her husband moved out the following day, taking the children to stay with his parents after discovering that their college funds, which he had been contributing to monthly, had been emptied by Lucy for temporary expenses that turned out to be spa weekends and shopping trips. A month after the family vote, my cousin Derek's wedding became a flashpoint of family drama. I was conspicuously uninvited, but to everyone's surprise, half the extended family refused to attend in protest, including Aunt Marie and Uncle Pete, who had apparently had a change of heart after learning the full story. Those who did go reported back that my parents spent the entire reception trying to damage control, telling increasingly implausible stories about my mental problems and drug issues that had supposedly led to my false accusations against them. Few were convinced, especially when my father, drunk on free wedding champagne, admitted to my cousin Jessica that, yes, they had borrowed money, but Mason owes us for raising him. 3 months after Thanksgiving, I received a partial payment of $13,245 through my attorney, the result of my parents selling their vacation timeshare, and Lucy pawning the jewelry from her various marriages, including an engagement ring she'd once claimed was worth $20,000, but fetched barely $2,000 at the pawn shop. It was a fraction of what they owed, but after discussing it with Julia and Sam, I decided to write off the remaining debt. The money had never been the point. It was about standing up for myself, about breaking the cycle of manipulation and entitlement that had defined our family dynamic for decades. The emotional freedom was worth far more than any dollar amount. For the first time since college, I was making decisions about my life without calculating their impact on my family's financial needs. Without the constant drain on my resources, Julia and I took our first real vacation together, 2 weeks in Spain that I'd never have allowed myself while carrying my family's financial burdens. I made partner at my firm, a promotion I delayed twice because helping my family took so much emotional energy that I couldn't focus on the necessary work. We put a down payment on a house, our house, with no strings attached, no expectation that we'd offer a spare room to Lucy after her next inevitable breakup, or host my parents for months-long visits when they inevitably faced foreclosure. I've maintained minimal contact with Aunt Marie, who apologized for not speaking up at Thanksgiving and admitted she'd been enabling the behavior for years out of misguided loyalty. Tyler still emails me about his science projects, and I send him books and encouragement, hoping to be a positive influence in at least one family member's life. Tim reached out after filing for divorce from Lucy, apologizing for not seeing the situation clearly and thanking me for inadvertently helping him discover the truth before more damage was done. We occasionally meet for coffee, a strange friendship born from shared disillusionment. The rest of the family has splintered into factions, those who have acknowledged the dysfunction and those who still blame me for exposing it. My parents sent a Christmas card with a stiff note about hopping to rebuild bridges and putting the past behind us, carefully avoiding any mention of responsibility or repayment. I haven't responded. Some bridges are better left burned, their ashes scattered by the winds of change. Sometimes I feel a twinge of guilt about how dramatically their lives changed. My mother had to return to work for the first time in decades, taking a retail job she considers beneath her. My father's health did suffer, though more from stress than any actual condition. Lucy had to move to a smaller apartment in a less prestigious neighborhood, her children now attending the public school she once disdained. But then I remember the decades of manipulation, the calculated extraction of not just my money but my self-worth, the cold calculation of that family vote. And I remind myself that I didn't cause their downfall. I merely stopped preventing it. People often talk about how blood is thicker than water, how family comes first no matter what. What they don't tell you is that sometimes the greatest act of self-love is walking away from toxic family dynamics. Sometimes the healthiest families are the ones we choose for ourselves, built on mutual respect and genuine care rather than obligation and guilt. I'm building that kind of family now. It's smaller than the one I was born into, but infinitely more nurturing. Julia and I are talking about children, something I'd never considered before because my family drained so much of my emotional and financial resources. I have real friends who give as much as they take. I have colleagues who respect my boundaries. I have a life defined by choice rather than obligation. And unlike the family that cast me out that Thanksgiving day, this one doesn't come with invoices attached.